My name is Moira Buckley. I am 68 years old. I spent 35 years as a hydrographic surveyor, measuring lake beds, shorelines, and the invisible lines that tell people what belongs to them and what does not. Last Tuesday, my daughter called to tell me they had sold my lake house. The buyers were moving in Friday. She said it like she was reporting the weather. Flat, finished, already done. I held the copper compass Frank gave me 44 years ago. I turned it over twice. Then I smiled. "But you forgot something important," I said. My daughter frowned through the phone. I could hear the frown. 35 years of reading terrain teaches you to hear what you cannot see. "What are you talking about, old woman?" I sipped my coffee. It was still hot. I had time. The buyer who signed those papers was me. My LLC, my money, my house, purchased back from the daughter who forged my name to sell it. The forged power of attorney was only the beginning. What happened at the closing meeting 3 days later would end a marriage, a real estate career, and a conspiracy that started in my daughter's printer tray. Welcome back to Alpha Mom Stories, a channel where mothers share the moments that tested their patience and the quiet strength that carried them through. If this one hits close to home, drop a comment and be sure to subscribe, because this story has a closing date, and you do not want to miss what walked through that door. Moira Buckley, retired hydrographic surveyor, 35 years in the field. I started at 22, one of 3 women in the Vermont State Certification Program. The men called me the girl with the compass. I showed up earlier than they did. I stayed later. I measured more carefully. I outlasted all of them. My father was a postal worker. He carried letters 6 days a week for 31 years and never once complained about rain. My mother waitressed at a diner on Route 7, the one with the neon pie sign that buzzed all night. She could carry 4 plates on one arm and remember every order without writing it down. Everything I built by measuring land and showing up before sunrise. My office was the spare bedroom at the lake house. Drafting table by the window, transit level in the corner, cleaned and calibrated every 6 months. Rolled maps in cardboard tubes stacked against every wall, each one labeled in my hand. And on the desk, the copper compass Frank gave me the day I passed my certification exam. My client list took decades to build. State agencies, the Army Corps of Engineers, private landowners tangled in boundary disputes, 3 lakefront developments along Lake Champlain, all surveyed by my hand. I drew the lines that told people where their property ended and someone else's began. I never imagined I would need to draw that line for my own children. I retired at 63. The lake house on Lake Champlain, bought 40 years ago, $47,000 in 1986, now appraised at $1.2 million. My pension pays $1,900 a month. Social Security adds $1,700. The mortgage was paid off in 2004. I was not wealthy, but I owned my home outright, and I knew exactly where every property line fell. The lake house has 4 bedrooms, cedar shingles weathered to silver by 40 winters, a wraparound porch that creaks in the right places, the places where Frank and I wore grooves into the wood with our rocking chairs. The dock stretches 30 feet into Lake Champlain. Frank built 2 Adirondack chairs by hand and set them at the end, angled so you could watch the sun come up over the mountains without turning your head. The view runs east across the water to the Adirondacks, and on clear mornings the peaks look close enough to survey. Frank Buckley, civil engineer. He designed bridges the way other people write poetry, with patience, precision, and a faith that the structure would hold. We married when I was 26. We found the house together that same summer, a foreclosure listing, $47,000. The foundation was cracked. The roof leaked. Frank rebuilt the foundation himself. I surveyed the lot lines and filed the plat. We raised Jillian and Todd there. Frank proposed on that dock, July 4th, 1984. He got down on one knee and the board cracked clean through. He fell sideways. I laughed. He asked anyway. I said yes, anyway. He fixed the board the next morning. Frank died 5 years ago, heart attack at 63, at his desk, working on plans for a pedestrian bridge in Stowe. His reading glasses were still on when they found him. After Frank died, the lake house became my anchor. I sit on the dock every morning. I feed the ducks. I watch the sunrise. I maintain the house myself. Mow the lawn, repair the screens, paint the trim. At 68, I climb a ladder for the gutters twice a year. People said I should sell, downsize, move somewhere manageable. But they did not understand. That house is not real estate. It is the last place Frank's hands touched. Jillian Buckley Pratt, my daughter, 42 years old, licensed real estate agent for 12 years with her own small agency in South Burlington. 3 desks, a copier, and a framed motivational poster about closing deals. She married Derek Pratt when she was 28. They have 2 children, my grandchildren, 10 and 7. I love them in the way grandmothers do, completely and without condition. Derek Pratt, 44, property developer. He started Pratt Development LLC 8 years ago with 2 projects. The first was a 12-unit condominium in Winooski. It ran over budget by $190,000 and sold at a loss. The second was a lakefront renovation in Shelburne. That one ended in a contractor lawsuit and left $380,000 in outstanding debts. Creditors were calling daily. Their marriage operated like a small business with a bad balance sheet. Jillian provided the real estate license and the local connections. Derek provided what he called vision, projects that sounded compelling on paper and collapsed the moment they touched dirt. They had refinanced their own home twice. Their credit cards were maxed. Jillian's view of me was practical and cold. Mom is 68. She's sitting on a $1.2 million asset. She mows her own lawn. She climbs ladders. She feeds ducks. That house is 4 bedrooms for 1 woman. Derek at dinner one evening, leaning into his wine glass like a man rehearsing a speech. Your mother's lake house could solve everything. Jillian looked at him. She already knew what he was thinking. She'll never agree. Derek leaned back, smiled. Then we don't ask. My daughter married a man who sees houses as assets and people as obstacles. I had met his type before, at boundary disputes. They always believe the line should move because they want it to. Derek's plan unfolded over 3 weeks. He laid it out the way a developer drafts a site plan. Neat, logical, and built on ground he did not own. Step 1. The power of attorney. Derek downloaded a Vermont POA template from a legal forms website. Jillian practiced my signature using old Christmas cards and the guest book from Frank's memorial service. 20 attempts on lined paper. The first 19 were too wide, too loopy, too hesitant. The 21st was what Jillian called close enough. In surveying, close enough is how bridges fall down. Step 2. The notary. Gary Phelps, semi-retired, Essex Junction. Derek paid him $200 in cash. Phelps did not verify identity. He did not ask for the principal to appear. Jillian signed as Moira Buckley. Derek presented a photocopy of my driver's license. Not the original, a photocopy. Phelps stamped what was put in front of him and went back to his crossword puzzle. Step 3. The listing. Jillian listed the property through her own agency. $1.2 million. Estate sale. Motivated seller. She used the forged POA to sign the listing agreement. The listing photos were taken on a Thursday afternoon while I was at my book club discussing a novel about a woman who loses her home. Step 4. The buyer. An offer came in within 10 days. $1.15 million from a couple in Massachusetts. Clean offer, quick close. Jillian accepted using the forged POA. Then there was Todd's role. Jillian called my son. Todd, we're selling Mom's house. It's for her own good. Todd asked the only question that mattered. Does Mom know? Jillian's answer was crisp. She will, after it's done. Todd said nothing. His silence was his signature on the conspiracy. My daughter is a licensed real estate agent. She has held that license for 12 years. She knows what a power of attorney requires. The principal's presence, proper identification, a witness. She knows that forging one is a felony in the state of Vermont, and she did it anyway. Jillian grew up in the lake house. It should have been idyllic. The dock, the mountains, the cedar rooms that smelled like summer all year long, but I was gone weeks at a time, surveying lakes in the Adirondacks, mapping coastlines in Maine, measuring boundaries that other people needed drawn. Jillian, age 12, her school musical. She had a solo. Tomorrow from Annie, 3 weeks of practice in the upstairs bathroom, singing into a hairbrush. Opening night, Frank sat in the front row with his good shirt on. The seat beside him was empty. I was surveying a boundary dispute on Lake George, a property line that 2 families had been arguing over for 9 years. I left a message on the answering machine. "Jilly, I'm so sorry. I'll be home Thursday." She never played that message for me. I found it still saved on the machine years later, blinking red. She chose a lake over me. She always chose a lake over me. That is what Jillian told Derek when they were dating. He remembers it because he wrote it down. He would use it later. Jillian raised herself and Todd in the ways that mattered most to a child. She made the lunches. She did the laundry. She signed permission slips. Frank was present, but gentle. The kind of father who reads bedtime stories, but does not remember to buy the groceries. By adulthood, Jillian's resentment had hardened into a simple equation. Moira valued land more than children. The lake house became the symbol of everything I chose instead of her. She owes us that house. Derek gave that resentment direction. If she values property so much, let's take hers. My daughter's anger was real. I missed her solo. I missed volleyball games. I missed things I can never get back. But missing a school play does not give you the right to steal someone's home. Resentment is a reason. It is not a license. Tuesday morning, October. The kitchen smelled like dark roast and cedar. I sat at the table with my hands around the mug, the copper compass beside it like it always was. Frank's compass, the one he gave me the day I earned my certification, the one that still points true after 44 years. The phone rang. I almost did not answer. I was watching a heron through the window. Connie Salazar. We had worked together for 15 years. She was a surveyor before she moved to title examination. She does not call to chat. Connie calls when something is wrong. "Moira, did you list your lake house for sale?" I set my coffee down. "No. There's a listing on the MLS, $1.2 million. Buckley Pratt Realty. There's a power of attorney on file naming Jillian as your attorney-in-fact." I did not speak for 7 seconds. I counted them. In the field, I count seconds during silence the way I count paces during a survey, to know exactly how far I have traveled. "Connie, I have never signed a power of attorney in my life." Then someone forged one. I picked up the compass. The needle pointed north. Steady. True, it did not waver. "Connie, how long until closing?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. "Do not flag it in your system yet. I need time." "Moira." She paused. Connie does not pause. "What are you going to do?" I turned the compass over in my hand. The brass was warm from sitting near the mug. Frank's initials were scratched into the back, FB, done with a pocket knife on our first anniversary. What I have done for 35 years, Connie. Measure the boundaries, then enforce them. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pencil, not a pen. Pencils let you redraw the line. I mapped 3 options the way I would map 3 possible survey routes through difficult terrain, each one with its own costs, risks, and margins of error. Option 1, call the police, file a report, wait for an investigation. The problem was simple. It would become he said, she said. My daughter would claim I had agreed verbally. Derek would back her story. The old woman narrative would surface. She cannot manage her own affairs. She is confused. The case would drag through months of interviews while the house slipped further away. Option 2, confront Jillian directly. Drive to her office, put the listing printout on her desk, demand an explanation. The problem was simpler. Evidence would be destroyed within the hour. The forged POA would vanish. The listing would be withdrawn. It would become a family argument, not a crime. And family arguments do not have consequences. Option 3, become the buyer. I underlined it twice. Form an LLC. Submit a purchase offer. Let the sale proceed. When Jillian signs the transfer documents using a forged POA at closing, she commits a felony in the presence of witnesses, a title company, and a recording clerk. The forged POA becomes recorded evidence of a completed crime, filed in county land records, permanent and public. I picked up the phone. It was 9:10. Raymond, I need you to set up an LLC tonight if you can. Vermont registration. Name, Champlain Meridian Holdings. And I need you to make an offer on a lake house. Whose lake house? Mine. Raymond Holt did not ask why. He had known Frank for 40 years. He knew me for 35. When a surveyor says, I need to redraw a line, you hand her the pencil. I'll have the LLC registered by morning. Tell me everything. The next morning, I drove to Montpelier. Raymond's office is in an old brick building on State Street, the kind of building where the stairs creak and the radiators knock, and the law books go floor to ceiling because Raymond does not trust digital files. Raymond Holt, 61. Silver hair kept short, reading glasses on a chain. He reads contracts the way I read survey maps, line by line, looking for the errors that other people miss because they are in a hurry. Champlain Meridian Holdings, LLC, was registered with the Vermont Secretary of State's office at 8:47 a.m. Raymond listed himself as managing member. My name appeared nowhere in the public filings, not as member, not as officer, not as registered agent, invisible. The strategy was precise. Raymond would submit the purchase offer through a buyer's agent in New York, someone Jillian had never met and would never think to question. The offer, $1.18 million, cash, no contingencies, no inspection period, no financing delays. A cash offer with no contingencies is catnip for a desperate seller, Raymond said, setting his glasses on the desk. Jillian will not shop this around. She will take it. Raymond explained the legal architecture. When Jillian signs the transfer documents at closing using the forged POA, she commits a Class D felony in the presence of witnesses, a title company representative, a recording clerk. Every document goes into county land records, deeded, stamped, and filed, a public record of a crime created by the criminal's own hand. Frank would appreciate the elegance, Raymond said. I nodded. He was right. Raymond understood what I was doing because he understood Frank. Frank built bridges, structures designed to hold weight that no one can see until it is tested. I was building one too, and closing day would be the load test. 1 week later, the offer was submitted. $1.18 million cash, close in 3 weeks. The paperwork was clean. The LLC was invisible. The buyer's agent in New York had never met Jillian and never would. Jillian called Derek from her office. I know this because Todd told me later, not out of courage, but out of guilt, which is the currency my son trades in. Cash offer, no contingencies. Jillian's voice was bright, relieved. The sound of a woman who believes the worst is behind her. Derek did not hesitate. Take it. Don't negotiate. Jillian called Todd next. The house is selling. Todd asked the question he always asks, the question that lets him feel morale without being brave. Does Mom know yet? Jillian's answer was the same. She'll know when it's done. Jillian accepted the offer. She signed the acceptance letter the way she had signed everything else, with my name in her hand, Moira Buckley, by Jillian Buckley Pratt, attorney-in-fact. The setup was complete. I know what Jillian said to Todd because he repeated it to me weeks later, sitting at my kitchen table with his hands shaking. She said, Mom doesn't need a lake house. She needs a 1-bedroom and a meal plan. Raymond called me that afternoon. They accepted. Closing is November 15th. Good, I said. That was all. I held the compass. The needle pointed north. It always points north. My daughter accepted a $1.18 million offer to sell my house to me. She did not know it was me. She was too busy counting the money to count the details. In surveying, we call that a blunder, an error so large it can only come from not looking. I asked Connie to send me a copy of the power of attorney on file with the title company. She did. No questions. Connie trusts surveyors the way surveyors trust their instruments, because both have been calibrated by years of use. I studied the document at my kitchen table, reading glasses on, pencil in hand, compass beside the legal pad. The signature was wrong, not dramatically wrong, not the kind of wrong that jumps off the page, the kind of wrong that only the person whose name it is would catch. The M was built incorrectly. I start my M with a downstroke from the top. Pen touches paper and pulls straight down before angling right. This M started from the bottom, the stroke climbing upward. Someone copying the shape without knowing the motion. It is the difference between drawing a line and surveying one. A drawing captures the image. A survey captures the truth. The notary stamp belonged to Gary Phelps, Essex Junction. I checked his records through the Secretary of State's office. 2 prior complaints for incomplete record keeping, one from a title company, one from a bank. Phelps stamps what is put in front of him and does not look up from his crossword. Then I found the listing. The property description listed the lot as 2.3 acres. I pulled my original survey from the tube against the wall. M. Buckley, PLS, written in my hand across the bottom right corner, dated 1988. The lot is 2.47 acres. The listing omitted the 0.17 acre riparian easement along the eastern shore. Jillian had not read the survey. My daughter listed my property without reading the survey. A real estate agent who does not read the survey is like a surgeon who does not read the chart. It is not just careless, it is dangerous. I drove to Montpelier on a Saturday morning. Elaine Buckley lives in a Cape Cod on a quiet street 2 blocks from the Capitol building. White clapboard, black shutters, window boxes that she replants every May. Frank's older sister, 67. Silver hair she pins up with the same tortoise-shell clip she has worn since 1985. Makes pie from scratch because she does not believe in store-bought crust. We sat at her kitchen table. Coffee and blueberry pie. I told her everything. The POA, the forged signature, the listing, the scheme, Derek's debts, Todd's silence, the LLC. Elaine set down her fork. She did not speak for a long time. Then she looked at me with Frank's eyes, the same gray-blue, the same steadiness. Frank would be heartbroken, and then he'd be furious, and then he'd do exactly what you're doing. He'd build a bridge, I said. He'd build a bridge and make them walk across it into the truth. Elaine stood and walked to the hallway closet. She returned with an envelope, cream-colored, Frank's handwriting on the front. She placed it on the table between us. Frank's letter, written 3 years before he died, addressed to Elaine. Elaine, if anything happens to me, make sure Moira keeps the house. That lake house is hers. She found it. She surveyed it. She paid for it with 35 years of work. Don't let anyone tell her it's too much house for one woman. It's exactly the right amount of house for Moira. I read the letter. My hands were steady. They are always steady. Surveyor's hands. Frank knew. Not about Jillian. Not about the scheme. But he knew the house needed protecting. He had measured the risk the way he measured load-bearing capacity. Quietly. Precisely. And years in advance. I want to pause here. My daughter forged my signature on a power of attorney to sell the lake house my husband and I built together over 40 years. She listed it through her own agency for $1.2 million. Her husband designed the scheme. My son knew and said nothing. And the buyer who signed those papers, that was my LLC. I was buying my own house back. If you have ever had a family member try to take what you built, stay with me. Because closing day is coming. Subscribe and drop a comment below. I want to hear your story too. Todd Buckley, my son. 39 years old, high school science teacher at Champlain Valley Union. He teaches biology, ecosystems, food chains, the way one disruption cascades through an entire system. He understands consequences. He studies them for a living. He knew what Jillian was doing was wrong. He knew it the way he knows that removing a keystone species collapses a habitat. He knew it, and he did nothing. After school one afternoon, Todd drove past the lake house. He did not stop. He sat in his car on the shoulder of the road, engine idling, and looked at the dock. He told me this later. He remembered fishing with Frank on Saturday mornings. Worms in a coffee can, Frank's old rod with the bent reel. He remembered me teaching him to read a compass when he was 8. I knelt beside him on the dock and put the compass in his small hands. Todd, north is always north. The compass doesn't care what you want it to say. He drove away. Then he called Jillian. Jill, I don't feel right about this. Mom is 68. She climbs ladders. We're protecting her. But the POA... Todd, stop. Her voice had the edge of a woman who has already decided. Either you're with the family or you're not. Todd said nothing. Again. It was a pattern he had perfected since he was 10. The quiet agreement of a boy who never learned that silence in the presence of wrong is not neutrality. It is permission. My son is not a bad man. He is a weak one, and in some ways that is harder to forgive, because a bad man acts from conviction. A weak man acts from the absence of it. Todd's silence did not build the conspiracy, but it gave the conspiracy room to breathe. Derek sat in his home office with the door closed. The desk was covered in unopened envelopes, 3 from law firms, 2 from banks, 1 from the Vermont Attorney General's office. That one he had turned face down. The total was $380,000, $240,000 to a contractor in Shelburne who had filed a mechanics lien, $90,000 to a bank holding a construction loan on the Winooski condos, $50,000 across 4 credit cards, all maxed, all accruing interest at rates that would make a mathematician wince. Derek's father lost their house in 1996. Foreclosure. Derek was 14. He came home from school and found his mother crying at the kitchen table. The bank notice was on the counter next to the salt shaker, as if it were a grocery list. They moved to a rental in Plattsburgh, 2 bedrooms for 4 people. His father never recovered, not financially, not in any other way. Derek swore it would never happen to him, never again. But he was bad at building. He was good at wanting to build. There is a difference, and the difference is $380,000. The lake house sale math was clean. He had run it a dozen times. $1.18 million minus closing costs, commissions, and transfer taxes equaled roughly $1.12 million net. Pay the debts. $380,000. Purchase a condominium for Moira. $300,000. Invest the remainder, $440,000, in a new development project in Stowe. Derek's math was clean. His morality was not. He had mapped the money down to the dollar. What he had not mapped was the law, or the fact that the woman he was stealing from had spent 35 years mapping things more carefully than he ever could. He confirmed the closing date on his calendar, leaned back in his chair, breathed. He breathed. That was his first mistake. You do not relax before the survey is complete. Sunday dinner at Jillian and Derek's house, 2 weeks before closing. I went, I smiled, I ate roast chicken with rosemary and complimented the potatoes. I played with my grandchildren, helped the 10-year-old with a puzzle, let the 7-year-old show me a drawing of a horse that looked like a dog. I told her it was beautiful. It was. After dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. The hallway passes Jillian's home office. The door was open. The printer sat on the credenza and there was paper in the output tray. The top sheet stopped me. Power of attorney, State of Vermont. My name, my address, my date of birth. And at the bottom of the page, Jillian's practice signatures, 20 attempts in blue ink, some crossed out with single lines, some crossed out with heavy scribbles, some circled. The 21st attempt circled twice with a check mark beside it and 2 words in Jillian's handwriting, close enough. My hands were steady. They are always steady. Surveyors' hands do not shake. I picked up the sheet. I folded it once, then twice. I placed it in my jacket pocket, next to the copper compass. I returned to the dining room. I sat down. I picked up my coffee. Jillian was talking to Derek about me as if I were not in the room. She glanced at me, then looked at her husband and said, "What are you talking about, old woman? Mom doesn't need a lake house. She needs a 1-bedroom and a meal plan." I heard it. I sipped my coffee. I said nothing. I sat at my daughter's table with her practice signatures in my pocket and her contempt in my ears. She called me old woman. I let her finish her wine, and I drove home with 21 attempts to forge my name folded next to the compass Frank gave me when I was 24. In surveying, we call this a control point, a fixed, verified position from which all other measurements are taken. That printer tray was my control point. Every measurement I made from that night forward was anchored to those 21 signatures and the 2 words my daughter wrote beside the last one. Close enough. The next morning, I was at Raymond's office before he unlocked the door. He arrived at 8:15 with a paper cup of coffee and his briefcase under his arm. He did not seem surprised to see me. I placed 4 items on his desk. 1, the practice signature sheet from Jillian's printer tray. 2, the forged power of attorney, copied from Connie's title company file. 3, my original boundary survey showing 2.47 acres. Against the listing's 2.3 acres, a 0.17 acre discrepancy that proved Jillian never consulted the survey. 4, Frank's letter to Elaine. Raymond put on his reading glasses. He read everything. 30 minutes. I waited in the chair across from his desk with the same patience I had learned at survey sites, the patience of a woman who knows that accuracy cannot be rushed. Raymond removed his glasses, set them on the desk. This is comprehensive. The practice signatures prove intent. She did not sign your name once by accident. She practiced it 21 times. The POA forgery is provable through handwriting analysis. The boundary discrepancy proves Jillian never consulted your survey before listing the property, and the LLC purchase creates a complete paper trail, from forged authorization to recorded deed. Then he laid out the closing day plan. Step 1. Let the closing proceed. Jillian signs as attorney-in-fact in the presence of witnesses. Step 2. After all documents are signed, the LLC attorney reveals the buyer's identity. Step 3. Present the forged POA, the practice signatures, and the boundary discrepancy. Step 4. Offer a choice. Cooperate voluntarily and face the consequences, or face them in criminal court. Raymond laid it out the way Frank used to lay out bridge plans. Step by step, load-bearing, no wasted material. Every element supported the next. Nothing decorative, nothing extra. 1 week before closing. November had turned the maples bare and the lake the color of pewter. Jillian and Derek sat at their kitchen table planning how to spend money that was not theirs. I know this because Todd was there. Todd was always there, present at the planning, absent from the objecting. Derek had a spreadsheet open on his laptop. $380,000 to creditors, day 1, before they can file anything else. Jillian nodded. Then $300,000 for Mom's condo. Something nice. 1 level, near a grocery store. Mom will be fine, Derek said. Better than fine, Jillian agreed. Safe in a condo, no ladders, no gutters, no dock to fall off of. They did not mention the remaining $440,000. They did not need to. The Stowe project was already sketched on a napkin in Derek's desk drawer. Meanwhile, I drove to the lake house. 1 last visit before closing. I parked in the gravel drive and walked the property. All 2.47 acres. Every boundary I had surveyed in 1988. The stone wall along the western edge, the stand of white birch at the northern corner, the eastern shore with its 0.17 acre riparian easement that my daughter's listing pretended did not exist. I walked to the dock. Frank's Adirondack chairs were faded now, the cedar gone pale. I sat down. The water lapped against the pilings in that rhythm it has kept for 10,000 years, unhurried, indifferent to human plans. Ducks drifted past. The Adirondacks were turning gold with autumn. I held the copper compass. The needle pointed north, always north. I sat on the dock where Frank proposed and watched the lake do what it has done for 10,000 years. Move without hurrying. I had spent 35 years measuring this lake's edges. Now I was measuring the edges of my family. I stood, walked to the car. I did not look back. I would see the dock again. I was the buyer. 3 days before closing. Todd drove to Burlington. I know this because my apartment faces the street. I saw his Subaru pull in at 2:15. He didn't get out. He sat behind the wheel with both hands at 10 and 2, the way Frank taught him when he was 16. 20 minutes. I counted. I'm a surveyor. I count everything. My phone rang at 2:35. "Mom, can I come up?" "Doors open, Todd." He sat at my kitchen table. The copper compass sat beside my coffee mug. Frank's compass, tarnished brass, the needle still pointing true after 44 years. Todd stared at it. He stared at it the way a man stares at something he's afraid to touch. "Mom, do you ever think about selling the lake house?" I studied my son. 35 years of reading landscapes taught me to read faces. The contour lines around his eyes were wrong, too tight, too shallow. Guilt is a terrain feature, like a sinkhole. The surface looks stable. Underneath, the ground is already gone. "No, Todd, I don't think about selling the lake house." He nodded, swallowed. His fingers drummed the table once. "Mom, His phone buzzed. He glanced down. I watched his face change, the sinkhole collapsing inward, then filling itself with fresh dirt. He put the phone away. "Never mind, I just wanted to see you." He hugged me at the door, held on 2 seconds longer than usual. I watched from the window as he sat in his car for 5 more minutes before pulling away, engine running, hands at 10 and 2, going nowhere. I found out later what the text said, from Jillian. "Don't. We talked about this. November 15th. Stay the course." My son came to confess. His sister's text stopped him. "Todd, you had one chance to be the man your father raised, and you let your phone make the decision." November 14th, evening. My Burlington apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles over a room when something large is about to happen. I sat at the kitchen table. The copper compass sat in front of me, tarnished brass catching the overhead light, needle pointing north the way it always has. Beside it, a legal pad with my notes, and beside that, the folder. I opened it. I'd opened it 100 times. But tonight I read every page. Forged power of attorney. My name in Jillian's handwriting. Practice signature sheet. 21 attempts. The last one circled, close enough in blue ink. Original boundary survey. My survey drawn in 1988. Blue ink on vellum, signed M. Buckley, PLS. MLS listing, showing 2.3 acres where my map showed 2.47. Frank's letter to Elaine, the one that said, "The lake house is Moira's." And Raymond Holt's 12-page summary. 40 years of friendship compressed into legal paragraphs. I reread Raymond's last line. "The closing of this transaction will constitute the completion of a felony under Vermont statutes, annotated Title 13, Section 2002. I closed the folder, placed the compass on top, brass on manila, north on evidence. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Parker and Associates Title Company, South Burlington. Jillian would arrive early. She always arrives early for closings. Derek would arrive in a suit. Todd would arrive looking like he hadn't slept, and I would arrive at 10:15, 15 minutes late, after the signing was complete. I'd timed thousands of survey measurements to the second. Tomorrow's timing was the most important of my career. I turned off the kitchen light. The compass sat in darkness. The needle didn't care about the dark. It pointed north anyway. My daughter forged my signature to sell my lake house. Her husband designed the scheme. My son knew and said nothing. And in less than 12 hours, Jillian would sit in a title company office and sign closing documents using a forged power of attorney. Selling my house to an LLC she didn't know was mine. Tomorrow is November 15th. Stay with me. Because what happened at that closing table changed everything. November 15th, 9:30 a.m. Parker and Associates Title Company, South Burlington. I know the building. 2-story brick. Parking lot facing Route 7. I'd done title research there twice in the 90s. Boundary disputes that required survey verification. The conference room is on the second floor. Long table, leather chairs, water pitcher. The kind of room where houses change hands and lives change direction. Jillian arrived first. Of course she did. Navy blazer, pearl earrings, leather portfolio. My daughter has done closings 100 times. She could recite the document order in her sleep. Today she was the seller's representative, power of attorney in her portfolio, my forged name on the signature line. Derek at 9:45, suit and tie. He hadn't worn a tie in 6 months. The knot was too tight. You could see the effort in his collar. Todd at 9:50, khakis, wrinkled blazer. He hadn't slept. I could see it from the parking lot, though I wasn't supposed to be watching. He sat at the far end of the table, as far from Jillian as the room allowed. The closing attorney was Patricia Oberg, efficient, precise. She laid out the documents, 2 inches thick, tabbed and flagged, the way I lay out survey instruments, everything in its place. The buyer's representative sat across from Jillian, a young attorney from Raymond Holt's firm, Sarah, folder closed, hands folded, waiting. She gave nothing away. She was very good. Connie Salazar was in the back office. She knew. My daughter sat at the closing table the way she sits at every closing, confident, prepared, in control. She didn't know that the young attorney across from her worked for Raymond Holt. She didn't know the title examiner had called me 4 weeks ago. And she didn't know her mother was sitting in a car in the parking lot holding a copper compass, waiting for the signing to finish. Patricia Oberg began. She stated the parties for the record. Seller, Moira Buckley, represented by Jillian Buckley Pratt under power of attorney. Buyer, Champlain Meridian Holdings, LLC. Document by document, tab by tab. Patricia's voice was steady. She'd done this 1,000 times. Each page turned, each signature line waiting. Jillian signed, Moira Buckley by Jillian Buckley Pratt, attorney in fact. She wrote it 7 times, 7 signatures, each one confident, each one fluid, each one a separate count of fraud. Derek watched from across the table. I know the look. I've seen it on contractors watching a foundation pour. He was calculating. Proceeds minus closing costs, minus commission. The commission went to Jillian's own agency. My daughter was collecting a fee for selling her mother's house, 6% of $1.2 million, $72,000, for forging my name. Todd signed as witness. His hand shook. Patricia noticed. Her pen paused for half a second, but she said nothing. Closing attorneys see a lot of nervous hands. They don't ask why. Sarah signed for the LLC. Clean, professional. Her pen moved the way a good surveyor's moves. No hesitation, no wasted motion. She gave nothing away. Patricia read the settlement statement. Net proceeds, $1,118,400. Cashier's check to be issued to the seller. Jillian reached for the check. Sarah spoke. Quiet. Level. Before we distribute proceeds, I need to introduce someone. Jillian's hand stopped. 3 inches from the check. Suspended. There's a moment in every survey when you know the measurement is about to change everything. When the transit locks onto a point that redraws the entire map. Sarah's voice was that transit, and the point she was about to lock onto was me. Sarah stood. She smoothed her jacket. She spoke to the room the way Raymond must have trained her. Clear, unhurried, every word carrying weight. Champlain Meridian Holdings, LLC, is represented by the law firm of Raymond Holt and Associates. The sole owner of the LLC has requested to be present for the completion of this transaction. She turned to the conference room door and opened it. I walked in. Gray jacket, surveyor's boots. The same boots I'd worn on 1,000 lakeshores. The copper compass was visible in my breast pocket, tarnished brass against gray wool. My folder was under my arm. I sat at the head of the table. I set the folder down. I placed the copper compass on top of it. Brass on manila, needle pointing north. Jillian's face went white, then red, then white again. 3 colors in 4 seconds. I've watched weather change on Lake Champlain. I've never seen it change that fast. Derek's chair pushed back 6 inches. Involuntary. The way a body moves when the ground shifts. Todd closed his eyes. Mom, Jillian started. Good morning, Jillian. I used my survey site voice. Level, professional. The voice that reads coordinates to a chain crew in 40-knot wind. Good morning, Derek. Good morning, Todd. Silence. Patricia Oberg looked from me to Jillian. Her pen was still. For the record, the buyer of this property, Champlain Meridian Holdings, LLC, is my company. I am the sole owner. The house you just signed over to the buyer, you signed it back to me. Jillian's mouth moved. That's not possible. You sold a house that wasn't yours. The buyer who signed those papers was me. I watched understanding arrive on my daughter's face the way I've watched weather arrive on Lake Champlain. Slowly at first, then all at once. I opened the folder. Jillian, you represented yourself as my attorney in fact. I'd like to discuss that power of attorney. I placed the POA on the table. The forged document. My name in Jillian's careful handwriting. Then beside it, the practice signature sheet from her printer tray. 21 lines, 21 attempts. 21 attempts to forge my signature. The 21st is circled with a check mark. You wrote close enough beside it. Jillian stared at the sheet. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. My daughter, who has never been at a loss for words at a closing table, had nothing to say. Derek leaned forward. Now hold on, that could be anything. I looked at him, calm. The way I look at a property corner that someone has tried to move. Derek, I spent 35 years signing survey maps. My signature appears on over 4,000 certified documents filed with the state of Vermont. Everyone is on record. Any forensic analyst can compare this forgery to those originals in about an hour. Would you like me to arrange that? Derek went quiet. His jaw worked. His hands went flat on the table. Patricia Oberg turned to Jillian. Her voice was professional, but I could hear the edge. She'd been a closing attorney for 20 years. She knew what she was looking at. Mrs. Buckley Pratt, is the power of attorney on file with this office authentic? Jillian said nothing. Todd put his head in his hands. The posture of a man who knew this moment was coming and hoped it wouldn't. My daughter is a real estate agent. She sat through 100 closings. She knows what a forged POA means. She knows it in her bones, in her license, in every continuing education course she's ever taken. She knew, and she did it anyway. I turned to the notary record. The notarization on this power of attorney was performed by Gary Phelps. His record states the signing occurred at my residence, 714 Lakeshore Drive. I was home that entire day. I placed the security camera printout on the table. I have a security camera at the front entrance. This still is date stamped. My driveway was empty all day. No one visited. No one signed anything at my kitchen table. I placed a second document beside it. The POA was signed somewhere else. My guess, your kitchen table, Derek. Since the notary form was completed in your handwriting, I placed the handwriting comparison, Derek's signature from a loan application, which is public record, next to the handwriting on the notary form. The slant was identical. The spacing was identical. The lowercase g with its distinctive open loop was identical. Derek's face drained. You can't. This is... I can, and I did. I spent 35 years reading documents. I've testified as an expert witness in 4 boundary disputes where documents were falsified. I know what forged paperwork looks like. Then I placed the MLS listing beside my original survey. The MLS listing describes this property as 2.3 acres. My survey, which I drew in 1988, shows 2.47 acres. The listing omits a 0.17 acre riparian easement along the eastern shore. That's a material misrepresentation on a property disclosure. Jillian's voice cracked. Mom, you don't understand. We were trying to help you. I looked at my daughter. I kept my voice level. The way a compass needle stays level, no matter what's happening around it. You told Todd I don't need a lake house, that I need a 1-bedroom and a meal plan. You called me old woman. I heard you, Jillian. I was at your dinner table, with your practice signatures in my pocket. The survey maps were still on the table. Blue ink on vellum. M. Buckley, PLS. My lines. My work. My property. My daughter called me old woman while I sat at her table with 21 attempts to forge my name in my jacket pocket. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who assumed you were too old to notice, you know exactly what this feels like. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and stay with me, because I'm not finished yet. I turned to Todd. My voice softened. Not much. a quarter tone, but enough for everyone in that room to hear the difference. Todd. He looked up, eyes red, the face of a boy who broke a window and waited 3 days to tell his father. You knew. You knew the POA was forged. You knew I never agreed to sell, and you said nothing. Mom, Jillian said it was for your... Todd, your father gave me a compass when I was 24. He said, Moira, north is always north. The compass doesn't care what you want it to say. You knew which direction this was heading. You chose not to look. Todd's face broke. Not dramatically, quietly, like surface erosion. The kind you don't notice until the bank is gone and the water is somewhere it shouldn't be. I'm not going to ask you why. Your sister has been making decisions for you since you were 10. She packed your lunch. She chose your clothes. She told you what to think about your mother. But you're 39 now. Silence is a choice. It was the wrong one. I'm sorry, Mom. I know you are. We'll talk about what sorry looks like later. Right now, sit and listen. My son's apology was real. I could see it in his face. The same face that looked at me over oatmeal when he was 6, milk on his chin, asking why birds fly south. But apologies don't fix forgeries, and sorry doesn't unlist a house. Raymond Holt stood. He buttoned his jacket, a small gesture but deliberate. The voice of Frank's oldest friend and a 40-year attorney filled the room, the way low pressure fills a valley. Steady, inescapable. For the record, the documents signed today constitute the completion of a real estate transaction using a forged power of attorney. Under Vermont statutes annotated, Title 13, Section 2002, this is forgery, a felony carrying up to 10 years. Additionally, the transaction constitutes fraud under Title 13, Section 2001. It constitutes elder financial abuse under Title 33, Section 6913. And it constitutes unauthorized practice of attorney-in-fact authority. Each document signed today is a separate count. He turned to Derek. His voice didn't change. It didn't need to. Mr. Pratt, the evidence indicates you designed this scheme, procured the notary, and completed the notary form in your own handwriting. Under Vermont law, that makes you a co-conspirator to each of these charges. He turned to Todd, same measured tone. Mr. Buckley, you were aware of the forged POA and participated as a witness to this closing. Your level of involvement will be for law enforcement to assess. Raymond placed his business card on the table, centered it, the way I center a benchmark on a survey monument. Mrs. Buckley has not yet filed criminal charges. She is giving you the opportunity to consult attorneys of your own choosing. I would recommend you use it. I stood beside Raymond, compass in my pocket, folder closed. You forgot something important. I'm the one who drew the property lines, and I know exactly where they end and where the law begins. Jillian's voice broke. Mom, you can't do this. We're your children. I looked at my daughter. You are my children, and you forged my name, sold my house, and called me old woman. Being my children doesn't make you above the law. It makes this worse. Jillian stood. Her chair scraped back against the tile, a sound like a survey stake being pulled from frozen ground. You want to talk about what's fair. Her voice filled the conference room. It bounced off the water pitcher. It rattled the window blinds. You were never there. I raised myself. I raised Todd. You were on some lake drawing lines while I was making dinner at 12. I didn't move. My hand stayed on the table. The compass stayed in my pocket. North stayed north. You chose lakes over your children. You chose property over people. And now you sit there with your compass and your folder and you act like you're the victim. The conference room was silent except for Jillian's breathing. Patricia's pen had stopped mid-note. Connie stood in the doorway, file folder pressed to her chest. Derek stared at the table. Todd stared at nothing. I waited. I let the echo of my daughter's voice fade the way I let the echo of a chainsaw fade before I take a measurement. You can't read the land when there's noise. You wait for the quiet. Then quietly, you're right about the school plays, Jillian. I missed your solo in 4th grade. I missed your volleyball semifinal. I miss things I will always regret. But I was working. I was earning. I was paying for the house you grew up in, the college you attended, and the license that lets you sell real estate. Every survey I drew paid for your braces, your college, your real estate license, the house you tried to sell. I paid for it with 35 years of early mornings and late nights on lakes you never bothered to visit. I paused, one breath. Missing your school play is something I owe you an apology for, and I've offered that apology many times. You've never accepted it. But forging my signature, selling my house, and calling me old woman at your dinner table, that isn't collecting a debt. That's committing a crime, and there is no amount of resentment that turns a felony into justice. Derek reached over and pulled Jillian back into her chair. She let him. The fight left her body the way heat leaves a lake in October, fast and all at once. Derek quiet. We need a lawyer. I nodded. Yes, you do. Derek sat, hands flat on the table, palms down, the posture of a man whose spreadsheet just deleted itself. I could see it happening behind his eyes, the numbers dissolving, the $380,000 payoff, the condo in South Burlington, the Stowe development, the new truck, all of it. Every cell in his mental spreadsheet going blank. How did you know? Connie Salazar. She examined the title for the buyer's lender. She's been my colleague for 15 years. We surveyed the Lake Willoughby watershed together in 2004. Derek closed his eyes. The title examiner. You built a scheme to sell a surveyor's house without checking who examines the titles. We check the benchmarks before we start the survey, Derek. You didn't check a single one. He looked at his hands. For 1 second, just one, he wasn't a developer. He wasn't a schemer. He wasn't a man with a spreadsheet and a plan. He was a 14-year-old boy watching his father lose their house in Rutland. I knew the story. Jillian had told me years ago. Bank took the house, family in a rental by Christmas. The fear was real. The $380,000 was real. The desperation of a man who swore he'd never lose a property was real. He didn't apologize. That second passed. His hand moved to his phone. His thumb found the screen. The developer returned, already texting, already calculating, already looking for the next angle. Some people learn from the survey. Some people just move the stake. The conference room was still. Jillian sat with her arms crossed, jaw tight, staring at the far wall. Derek was texting his attorney, thumbs moving fast, the only part of him still functioning. Todd stared at the table like it held answers. It didn't. It held documents. I stood. I picked up the copper compass. I put it in my jacket pocket. The weight of it, small, certain, familiar, settled against my ribs. I turned to Jillian. Jillian, you are my daughter. I love you. I will always love you. I missed your school plays. I missed your volleyball games. Those are my failures, and I own them. I paused. But I didn't steal from you. I worked for you. Every survey I drew paid for your braces, your college, your real estate license, the house you tried to sell. I paid for it with 35 years of early mornings and late nights on lakes you never bothered to visit. I turned to Derek. You owe $380,000. That's your problem, not mine, not my house. I turned to Todd. Todd, you had a chance to tell me. You drove to Burlington. You sat at my table. You almost said it. Your phone buzzed and you stopped. I held his eyes. I'll give you one more chance, not today, but eventually, to be the man your father raised. Don't waste it. I picked up the folder, closed it, manila edges aligned. This property remains in my name. The LLC purchase is voided. The evidence has been documented and preserved. What happens next legally is up to the state of Vermont. What happens next as a family is up to you. I walked to the door, stopped, turned. The lake house dock needs restaining before winter. I'll do it Saturday. If any of you want to help, you know where I'll be. I walked out, compass in my pocket, folder under my arm, surveyor's boots on tile floor. I didn't cry. I don't cry at surveys. I read the data, mark the boundaries, and file the report. The crying would come later. on the dock, at sunset, in Frank's chair. But not here. Not in front of them. Within 6 weeks, the survey was complete. Every line drawn. Every consequence measured. Jillian. The Vermont State Police opened an investigation in late November. Charges filed in December. Forgery, fraud, elder financial abuse. Her real estate license was suspended pending adjudication. Her agency listings were transferred to a colleague in Essex Junction. The Burlington Free Press ran the story on December 12th. Real estate agent charged with forging mother's signature to sell lakefront home. 4 paragraphs. Front page of the local section. My daughter's professional photo beside a photo of the lake house. 2 images that should never have been on the same page. Derek. Co-conspirator charges. The investigation uncovered the notary arrangement and the handwriting match. His development company's debts became public record during discovery. $380,000 spread across 3 creditors who'd been patient and were now not. The Stowe project evaporated. The condo listing was withdrawn. Todd. No criminal charges. He cooperated fully, provided the text messages from Jillian, confirmed the timeline, testified to what he knew and when he knew it. His relationship with me was fractured but not severed. Short phone calls, careful words, 2 people learning to stand on ground that had shifted beneath them, rebuilding. Gary Phelps. Notary commission revoked by the Secretary of State's office. He cooperated with prosecution. And me. Full ownership retained. Raymond placed the lake house in an irrevocable trust. Raymond Holt as trustee. The property can never be sold, transferred, or encumbered without my explicit in-person witnessed authorization. No power of attorney, no exceptions, no shortcuts. December. First snow on the Adirondacks. The mountains across the lake turned white overnight, the way they do every year, the way they did when Frank was alive, the way they will when I'm not. I drove to the lake house, walked the gravel path, stepped onto the dock. Frank's Adirondack chair. I sat. The water was still. Winter quiet. The ducks had gone south. The mountains stood white against a pewter sky. The copper compass sat in my palm, needle pointing north, always north. Elaine visited Saturday. We restained the dock together. 2 women in their late 60s, brushes in hand, cedar stains sharp in the cold air. Our breath made small clouds. Frank would love this, Elaine said. Frank would complain about the cold and then stay until it was done. We laughed. The sound carried across the water. Nothing else did. Todd came in January, alone. He brought sandpaper and a bag of stainless steel screws. He helped me repair a loose board on the dock, the same board Frank cracked the night he dropped to one knee with a ring and a question. My son fixed the board his father broke. It's not forgiveness yet. It's a beginning, and beginnings are measured 1 board at a time. I sat in the lake house study. The copper compass rested on the mantelpiece. Tarnished brass, steady needle, 44 years of pointing true. Survey maps stood in rolled tubes against the wall. Frank's engineering books lined the shelf. I spent 35 years drawing boundary lines for other people. The most important boundary I ever drew was my own, between what my children owed me and what they could take from me. A compass points north. It doesn't negotiate, neither do I. Spring came the way it always comes to Lake Champlain. Slowly, then all at once. I volunteered at the Burlington Senior Center. The class was called Understanding Your Property Rights. 8 women sat in the first session. I brought copies of boundary surveys. I explained easements, deeds, powers of attorney, what they mean, what they protect, what happens when someone forges one. I spent 35 years teaching land where its edges were. Now I teach people. The surveys are different. The precision is the same. That's my story. 4 weeks of silence, 1 copper compass, and a closing meeting that redrew every line. If this story reminded you to check your deed or to call your mother, do it today. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.